Okay, so we're on to learning about how to use an interesting statistic for a strategy for the hook. So again, you have to focus on what your claim is, and you have to think about how you could use a statistic to sort of bring people into the topic or the issue that you're going to talk about in your paper. So again, my claim is the theme in Cinderella is that happiness is not a destination, but a way of living. So I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, so what kind of a statistic or intriguing fact could I maybe possibly try to find that could sort of help me prove, or get the point across that like happiness is found from within. So I was thinking, like, if I found a statistic, I said here, for example, mine could be looking up a statistic on how common depression and suicide is among people, like at this day and age, like in the 21st century. My claim is saying that happiness comes from within. So, statistic on maybe suicide or the rate of depression. And again, I'm going to have to look this up. I don't know that, but could possibly get my reader to think about the point I'm going to prove, which is that happiness isn't outside, but it's found on the inside, which means that realization could help people with depression struggle. So in a way, I'm kind of like looking at my paper to sort of like convince people, like, hey, like if you understand the concept that happiness comes from within, that could sort of like fix some of the depression issues in our society. Like that's the kind of thinking that you like sort of think about when you're trying to use a intriguing statistic or fact. So the way that I went about doing this is I went and literally looked up credible sites for credible statistics. And so there's all these different ones: Bureau of Economic Analysis, Bureau of Justice Statistics, Center for Disease Control. And since mine is kind of dealing with mental health, I decided to look up the CDC. So now there's all kinds of stuff here. I find it a little bit hard to read, but nonetheless, I could look something up. I can maybe even go to like do another Google search and I ended up finding a statistic that I wanted to use. How you would write that is you would say, because you have to cite your source, you would say, let's see, Bill Jones. Yeah, yeah. Like maybe like you'd have to give his position. Like maybe he's the president of the CDC, Center for, and you'd want to, if it was CDC, you'd want to write that out like Center for Disease Control. States, and then you put a comma, and then you'd put quotation marks around the quotes. So let's just say there is a 50% rate of all adults experience depression by the time they reach 30 years old. Now, I'm completely making the statistic up, so you cannot do that, okay? But as you can see, I wanted you to sort of see how you actually would use a statistic in a sentence, okay? Because now the next, after, if you use that as a hook, what you would do next is you would go in and you would explain that hook, but we'll get to that next part. So I just wanted to show you like how you could use an interesting statistic to really bring somebody into your paper.